and welcome to this episode of ArtsAbly in Conversation. My name is Diane Collin. I am a woman with short hair, blue eyes, and glasses, and today I wear a gray fleece. Behind me is a dance studio with gray walls, tall mirrors, and spotlights. This series presents artists, academics, and project leaders who dedicate their time and energy to a better accessibility for people with disabilities in the arts. You can find more of these conversations on our website, artsably.com, which is spelled ArtsAbly.com. Today, ArtsAbly is in conversation with Traci Foster, a Canadian-based artist and educator living in Regina in Canada. You can find the resources mentioned by Traci Foster during this episode on ArtsAbly's website in the blog section.
Watch me walk across that river.
Listen to this. Bring your joy, bring your shit, bring yourself.
The beautiful thing about Listen to This is that everyone comes from a different place. You know, we're not like, this isn't just a spinal cord injury acting group. It's people with autism, people with spina bifida, anything. And you don't even really need to identify with disability. If you want to practice, art and make art with us, you're welcome. But it's a place where you can go and be accepted, no matter your difference.
When I think of LTD and the folks within the organization, I think of family. We're close, those of us that have been around for a while, and we're fairly, I think, open to new family members because people identify through that word quite consistently and pretty quickly.
I first became aware of Listen to This community arts organization in my work at the Artesian. It's sort of a foundational part of the programming at the Artesian, and Listen to This and the folks involved with it make up something that is very large. I'd love to say that it's about defiance, or it's about great art, or it's about therapy, or it's about community, but all those things together don't come close, it seems.
Listen to This is a community of artists that give people the opportunity to experience crip culture through their art.
The ability to pull stories and to give space to those and to develop those in a way that pulls out things for me that I would not get the chance to say in this way. I would not be where I am. I would not be studying for a Master's of Fine Arts. I don't actually know what I'd be doing.
I feel like working with Listen to This over the years has just molded me and helped me grow into even being able to say, yes, I'm a theater artist, period.
I'm stronger every day. I've got my faith. I've got no time to waste to get to where I need to be. I got my back to the wall. I've got nowhere to fall. I'm standing up tall. Watch me walk across that river. Look the devil in the eye.
Welcome to this new episode of ArtsAbly in Conversation. Today, I am with Traci Foster, who is a Canadian-based artist and educator living in Regina in Canada. Welcome, Traci.
Thank you so much, Diane. My pleasure to be here.
Yeah, shared pleasure, because we're going to have to talk about a very vast work that you're doing And I love that you're working with so many intersectionalities and domains in music, but in arts in general and research. So we will talk about that, but I wanted to first welcome you and ask you if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to the arts and music and singing, voice, and also if you could provide a visual description. Thank you.
Absolutely. So today, I am presenting as, my pronouns are she, they, first of all. I'm a white woman with long dark hair, with lots of threads of white going through it, big resin clear framed glasses, and really light makeup. I have a pink variations of pink scarf wrapped around my shoulders, white t-shirt. In my background, you'll see a big window with lots of beautiful white light, a little sculpture. It's like a metal lightning bolt, a blue, cobalt blue lightning bolt on a clear pedestal. That's actually something that we were presented as an organization not long ago, for lead organization in the province. I have a little frame of my past and present cats that I've rescued behind me. And on the other side, a shrine to my mother who passed away not that long ago. My walls are white, and you see a little bit of my wooden desk and some files in the background.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about you, about how all this arts attractions got started.
Well, I guess I usually now preference by saying I started to dance at 3, meaning I started to be on stage at 3 with tap and ballet and Ukrainian dancing. And then I added baton and other things, and did that into kind of mid-adolescence. So I had a very strong relationship with performance and music when I was young. And I think partially because I was very awkward in my like social skills and in conversation. I was very, very shy. So I used the arts as a way in which to express and communicate. And then swayed away from that a little bit. I did hair. I studied and such, and I did hair, competed and did sculptural hair competitions and stuff like that. And then I found my way towards performance as a mature student. So I started studying at the University of Regina, and I was studying theater. Even though theater wasn't actually a main interest, I loved the work that actors did to prepare themselves to work. So I began to study theater, and I had a very difficult time keeping up and sort of, I don't know if fitting in is the proper term, but I didn't feel like I belonged there a lot. And that was difficult. And somewhere early into the study, about halfway through, I met an artist who invited the possibility, I'll be very careful to say, the possibility of me leaving school and pursuing my passions outside of the Institute. And that in fact is what I did. So I began to do self-study in places like Toronto and Vancouver and LA and such, and got really interested in the art rooms, the process rooms I was finding. And at that time, I wouldn't have used the word access, but in many ways, access was being provided to accommodate me in ways that just really what it translated into is I felt like I belonged. I didn't feel like I wasn't part of what was happening or couldn't keep up with what was happening. So I just started to do what I just now summarize as my life learning, because it just continues to go. And in 2000 and 2006, one of my friends slash teachers from Toronto was working on a project with a student of hers named Kazumi, and they created a show called the CP Salon. And so Fides Kruker is her name, and she and Kazumi decided they would tour that show in Western Canada. So I produced that show, or co-produced that show with an organization here in Regina. And we held a 4-day workshop with Fides, Kazumi, and myself leading. And just by the sheer number, the sheer interest, the dedication, the number of people who attended for those 4 days, which was, the number was 24, we were able to see, and so was another organization that works with art for social change, that there was a void in our sector around providing opportunity for disabled people. So I was hired to start doing workshops, eventually became a artist in residence for this organization called Commonweal Community Arts Organization. And I worked really closely with them and South Saskatchewan Independent Living Center as an artist in residence to start doing individual work with disabled people interested in the arts, and develop group work and workshops, as well as facilitate other artists and to do the same. And that was very, very successful. And we started making an impact in our little city of Regina by showing up and having people who people were not used to seeing on stage. And then that culminated into a group being formed called Listen to This Voice, and eventually a nonprofit being founded by me in 2014. And then things changed quite a lot. It was very community, creative community art driven through that period. Although myself and a few others were working as emerging professional artists. In 2014, I was invited into the University of Regina. There had been an unfortunate situation with a student who was a quadriplegic and studying theater, and she was there were so many barriers being put up for her to exist inside of the program, and eventually she was asked to consider finding another interest so that she would be able to succeed, in the words of the professor. So I was contacted to come in, and I guess it was kind of a cleanup situation, but I wouldn't have seen it as that then. I didn't know overtly. So I was called in, and I co-taught a class called Devising Inclusive Theater. And we had that woman and four other people who use wheelchairs that are interested in performance, and one person that lived with invisible disability. And we worked through this class to understand disability art and culture through conversation and watching videos and learning together. And then I used the somatic processes that I use as an artist and as a trauma-informed therapist to work not as therapy, but work with an eye on belonging, feeling safe enough to belong, and developing content. And we ended up putting together a original devised show that was presented at the end of the term. And then there was 100 and some people that took it in, and people went wild. They'd never seen 4 people that used wheelchairs on the stage at the same time. So people were a bit flabbergasted, plus the content was very rich and beautiful, and the performers were rich and beautiful. So it drew a lot of attention, and we were invited right then after the show to perform at a Cathedral Village Arts Festival, at a community arts festival that happens yearly. And we agreed, and the rest is sort of history. We had a theater company, Boom, who started to show that show around the city and the main theaters, and eventually toured the province. And then we created a second show, which got halted literally the day that COVID shut the world down. We were literally packed, trailers packed to leave after 6 weeks of rehearsal and two years of development. So us and many were interrupted in a pretty real way. And in that show, we had live music. So that was new from the first show. And then we pivoted quite beautifully through COVID and did all kinds of things online and created radio shows and did things. And then when we started coming back into in-person programming, things had changed for a few of the members who were in the original theater company. 2 had moved, 3 had moved in total. And so we started to play with the music. And long story short, we created and founded a music ensemble who also were carrying some of the the originally written monologues and stories within the music set. And we have toured around Saskatchewan for 2.5 years now, seeing, thousands of people and continuing to introduce people, really truly introduce people to the reality that people that are disabled can and arguably should be represented or be seen on stage. So yeah, it's been a very wild kind of 18 years, and then a really important time to be present in this province. Who, at the beginning, when I began to really be a little more politicized about it, a little louder and confident, I guess, and louder about things, we understood we were in a province where there was no understanding at all of disability culture and belief. As a matter of fact, there was a pushback on whether it was legitimate. So it's been a big journey for all of us.
So there is a community part and a professional part, right? In this.
Yes.
And how did you, so the professional part, is it part of the founding members or the initial members, or is it moving a lot? Yeah, both. Yeah.
Yeah. So many of the founding members, thank you for using that term, because that's why we're here. I shouldn't say many, some of the founding members have continued to develop either as really committed creatives, artists that work more from a recreational perspective, but as importantly as other professional artists in their contribution to art. In that case, it's mostly in the city relative to challenges from touring and such. And then others have moved through to pursue studies, move into actually feel competent enough to advocate for themselves as students, some in performance, some in other areas of interest, but still working through the arts. So yes, they really are interconnected. Now, I love the question, because right now it's 10 years of nonprofit work. So we are in a year of revisioning for ourselves and looking at what we feel from the inside of our experience as a disabled-led disability arts organization. What is how can we best work or serve our community? And right now we're at it's a challenging stage, actually, of looking at what's really missing now is equitable development of professional artists that live with disability, representation of professional disability artists' work, both in province and nationally and internationally, and of course the ongoing art service aspect from a disability led perspective. So we are considering, we're considering looking for organizations who are appropriately funded to mentor so that they can continue the really rich and vital community work we have been doing, while we start to develop these other things for the purpose of, again, continuing the growth of representation of disability art and culture in Saskatchewan, which, you know, we're known still as the well, us in Manitoba, the flyover provinces in Canada where disability culture is concerned. So, you know, we want to work hard to make sure that that dissolves as as a way to be understood.
As a um, someone who's managing the all the activities of this kind of organization, I know you have been working in in voice, in I don't mask, clown. I don't remember all the list of things you've done, but how did all that build so that you finally say, okay, all that I need to put it into an organization or into several activities, because also you were doing a great work into voice too, if I remember well.
Yeah.
So how did it build?
I think, Diane, that you know, there's two things that come to mind. I hope I'll get the word right. Coddlewomple. I found a new word that means moving towards an unknown destination with a purpose or something like that. That feels a little bit like I truly felt like I found myself in a word that I found. And also, when I began to, you know, I was privileged enough as a person to travel away and to places where I was finding at that time, I'll be really clear, I wasn't looking for places that would hold a disabled person because although I knew that I had different diagnoses and I knew that I struggled with things in a very overt way that others didn't, like in school and in dance practices and stuff, I was not I was not identifying as a disabled person, therefore a disabled artist. So I was finding my way into places that felt like, oh, they felt safe, and they would acclimate, they would work to regulate my nervous system so I wasn't so anxious that I couldn't participate or take things in. So I was doing just this rich learning. And then they intersected with the people that I was, you know, engaged with in Regina. I would think, well, all the students I know who I was much older with, because I came in at 28, they were always just freaked out and expected to learn and perform. And so I would bring this information back, and in a very naive way, in retrospect, quite honestly, I would offer to the best of my ability some of these tools and these strategies and these ways of working that were more creative than they were systematic. And that caught on a lot through that. But I really just have this is, I hope it doesn't sound ignorant or aloof, but I followed my needs. Sometimes I didn't even understand what my needs were, but I actually found my way into finding or following something that then revealed to me, oh, well, of course I'm interested in voice. It's the thing that I probably will leave this earth not fully realizing because of the way my nervous system works and my energy flares and crashes and stuff work. So I really have stumbled upon things that have allowed me to come into it's a little bit of a catchphrase right now or a trend, but an embodied presence, which, you know, really understands it's my political right to be in my body in the way it is and experience pleasure like everybody else. And that's no longer from a perspective of trying to be the way others, the way that a more sort of normal or average functioning person would be. It's very different patterns, as I don't have to talk to you about or anybody listening to this really. So yeah, that's really how it's happened, and that's how it continues to happen. You know, I don't stop learning because I'm curious about being here for myself and with others in the service of the better good for all of us. through the arts. And there's, in my experience in Saskatchewan, there's a lot of work that has to be done for the world to sort of catch up to this idea that access is a really important thing for everybody. And I love to remind myself that our productivity in this organization, my own and others, is phenomenal. And it's partially because I work quite diligently with this idea that it's coming from us. So if we don't know how to look after ourselves within it, we're going to be hooped. So we work quite a lot with things such as somatic practices and voice work, which sounds like singing, but it's not just, and stuff like that, to stay as engaged with ourselves and our well-being as we possibly can in the moment.
Can you talk about your Fitzmaurice voice work?
Yeah, that's it's one of my the loves of my life, actually. And it's partially because of what it, well, it's partially because of the people, of course, but the practice, like, that was the beginning of something that was so transformative for me as a person and as an artist, that I've not had time to really truly reflect on it fully. But I met the founder of the work, who is Catherine Fitzmaurice, just an incredible human. Her son attended a workshop that I was doing at the Banff Center for the Arts with Richard Armstrong. That's extended vocal work. And I had been engaged in that work for quite some time, very awkwardly. I loved the space, it was safe, but I was very awkward in myself at that time. And Saul Kotzebue was there, and I watched him work. I watched how he engaged with people. I watched how he was very insightful when people had a bias or a tokenizing attitude towards people like myself. And so, long story short, he invited me to taste the work. At that time, we didn't have Zoom, so we were doing it literally by our landlines on the floor on speaker. So I touched the work with him that was happening in LA and New York, and he didn't persuade me. He invited me to participate in the teachers training as the first Canadian, and I did. And it was a very wild journey because the work intersected with my art practice, of course, that was why I was there. But for me, more importantly, it intersected with some shifts in my psychological and physiological health that I had believed up until then weren't possible. So, yeah, I practiced, and I really feel like it was at that point that I found my voice, a way in which I could advocate for myself and feel, well, always awkward. I'm always awkward, but safe within my awkwardness and discomfort. And so, yeah, it's a work that I love. And then, I quickly, when I started, also was doing somatic experiencing work quite regularly. And I started integrating the two right away into the practice because I was interested in integration of practices. And now, as a result of that, Saul got very interested in that, and the whole organization has gotten interested in how to work in a way that asserts priority on understanding the importance of artists and the right of artists to have regulated nervous systems as opposed to be in the performative fury all the time. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I mean, it's the thoughts of mixing everything you've talked about. So the voice work, but also the access needs, but also the movements, but also uh, wellness in general. And so it's always fascinating to see how these paths evolve in a way, because it's not given. First of all, it can be very complicated as a path. And then, yeah, so it's great that I'm glad to hear that you were able to add like a little bit of bricks to everything, and to offer that and to work with others to be able to develop these activities.
Yeah, it's a real gift, and it really has like we disability led, for example. I literally remember the day and the person who said, "Well, you folks are a disability led disability arts organization. I don't know how many we have in Canada, let alone in Saskatchewan." Here's us going, "We're what?" Because we hadn't heard the term before, and he had just been to a conference in the UK and brought it back with him. He was an artist we were working with, so there was that, and then not that long ago, 3 years ago, I think it was, I heard the phrase creation as care. Well, that was it for me because that if I was going to get the tattoo that I continue to wonder if I ever will before I leave this planet, it might be that, but might be other things. Anyway, creation as care, that would be the summary of all my work. I've always looked for work in which I could feel than better than I typically do in my body. That's changed now, but the offering of places that intersect, like as a disabled person, I can't remove care from my desire to create. It's never worked for me. I have a lot of burnout experience, and I see that in others. So that phrase, creation as care, makes my heart thump because I feel like, yes. And then I also feel like, why is that not understood? It just across the board because the more the better are we are, the better we feel in our skin, the more productive we are.
Mhm.
And that doesn't matter how we function, how that includes all aspects of diversity. So yeah, I kind of love that.
So what are the current projects that you're working on?
I was trying to summarize it in my writing that I shared with you that I did. Well, I didn't share the writing, but that I had doing a little outline because I'm tired today and I was afraid my conversational skill wouldn't be good. But I'm like, which ones do I share? Or which one do I share?
Share them
So,
all.
well, you don't want to say that. That'll take a while. But what project? Okay, well, listen to this, which we acronym LTD, is I mean, it's the role I hold is as EDAD, so executive director and artistic director. I happen to be a founder with all the founding members, and also do a lot of the creation work and programming and consultation. So that takes up a lot of my time and energy, quite honestly. So most of what I'm focused on is inside of that. Um, and that's I mean, I feel I feel really fortunate actually to be doing it and also to be doing it with the people I'm doing it with. And that's a truism. Within that, I was like, what do I share? Okay, well, what I'll share is there's a project that I'm super excited about because it intersects the disability like art service, so the disability consultation aspect and education, as well as performance. So our music ensemble, as I shared, they're called the Dripping Honeys, and our theater company, they're called the Other Ordinary, continue to build work, and then ideally we're able to take that work if we get funding out into the province. So right now we're building an initiative called the Axis of Access. So it's like the Axis of Access, and we're creating a living document with an organization called Saskatchewan Arts Alliance that outlines the foundation of access in our current landscape for organizations and funders. And it's modeled after We See You, the document We See You White America that was done just pre or during COVID. And it's kind of a demand of attention to creating access within organizations. And from our perspective, what our initiative is to not only ask people to build access or be transparent about what they aren't able to do, but let's do it as a province in the arts sector with continuity so that disabled people aren't reinventing, have to tell their story or wander from place to place and time to time, what people understand and how much they're going to have to share in order to belong, yada yada yada. So there's the document that's been in process for a while now, and it's just about ready to be released, and it will be revisited every 12 to 18 months, hence the living aspect. And it will be accompanied with the music ensemble in tour. So the music ensemble will take the show that we presently have out, and eventually the new show we're developing that's loosely based on the history of disability culture. And we'll take the stories and the music out to, before we talk about the document or the politicized stuff, so that, people see themselves represented, they get excited and their souls open, because that's partially what art does. And there's not as much defensiveness or only analytical response to this very political document that we're putting forward, or this movement in the province. So that's something we're working on right now, and there's various stages or phases or stages, I guess, of that. There's the document itself and all the promotion and the events and all that are coming up. There's the beginning of development of the new work, which is we just did a four-week songwriting workshop with artist Curie Christensen, who's originally from here but lives in France. So we want to write our own music for this particular song, not use covers, and then write the monologues and stories, of course. So there's that work, and then there's the work of maintaining the level of brilliant music and storytelling that they're already doing. So keeping the show that's current and can move out alive. So those three aspects in that one project. So that's pretty important one.
Mhm. And this
Yeah.
document will be published live, right? Everybody can access it.
Yeah, I can invite you to come. We will have in-person and online introductions to it. And of course, it is a Saskatchewan based initiative, but it's not for Saskatchewan only, obviously. And I will, let me say this for sure, Diane, is we've recently been very fortunate to begin to work with, in our province, there's this organization called Saskatchewan Districts, and they work in sport, culture, and recreation. And the province is quite big, as you know, so there's large chunks that each district has. So there's 7 of them in the province, and we've started interacting and building a relationship with 5 of them, and that's why our tours are as successful as they are. We're no longer, like we used to, just going out and hoping that the 1 or 2 people who know of us and want us to come can build enough. We've had such beautiful relationships building and collaborations with the district consultants and EDs and such, and therefore we've had big audience, and we continue to have big interest. So this is really an important aspect for us, because we're no longer representing largely only in Regina and Saskatoon, the 2 sort of main cities. So this is a big time for us, and it's so fertile because we're all learning so much together about what is in place and what isn't and such.
Yeah, I'm sure about that. Also, yeah, this can be useful for everybody, like the people who are curious what is happening in the arts right now in terms of disability and culture, what is happening in how are things progressing. And so, yeah, that's very important. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels important. We feel lucky because we're just doing our thing, and right now I'm working very diligently at figuring out how we can reflect on what we do, because we are pretty productive, and it continues to go and it continues to grow. But the reflection on it would help us to be able to address the how are you doing this, or how did you do this, or give us some tools, because really it's a lot of it sounds so flippant, but it's like following the path of the heart in like a gaggle of disabled people who have a desire to work as artists and also so reclaim their right for the better good of all of the people, the broader community of disabled people in the province and beyond. So it sounds really big, but really it's quite, it's just moving along in its own way, following one thing to another.
I have a related question, and I like this question because everybody has a different notion or definition of accessibility in the arts or disability in the arts. And so, what is it for you to work in accessibility in the arts or disability culture? What does it mean for you?
Oh, this one makes me shy, and I'm not sure why. I'm going to look at my notes again. The I recently had last week I had an interview, and I truly feel like a massive honor to be working in disability art at this time in history. And not because I like the fight, because I really don't. It's exhausting. However, I love the people and the camaraderie, like the true relationship and community development that I've experienced within this work, which is very different to what I have experienced outside of the disability cultural and disability artwork. It's not that I didn't have community, but this is really, I feel like it's true. So I feel extremely honored. I also feel honored to be able to be working with this movement, this team of people like yourself, to broaden the understanding of other people. So it's no longer thought about as like I can't ask that, I feel awkward, or that's not the way it goes. This is how the way it goes, reclaiming voice and those things. I feel very touched, maybe is a better word, to be a part in watching people open their minds and their hearts, realize that their ignorance and their biases were hidden in many cases. And now, although it doesn't feel great to have that realization and that opening, being brave enough and courageous enough to go, yes, okay, I made it through that. Now, what can we do to work or support this initiative? That feels like, that feels like something that I'm not able to define yet, really, in a way, because it feels significant. It feels like you're a real part of something.
And in a way, it is activism. It is passive activism, but it is education. And education for me, it's activism. It's showing people, look, this is real, right? It's part of a world. And
Yeah.
some people never dealt with anything disability related, especially in the arts, and knowing how it is, the lack of access and the preconceived ideas that artists with disabilities cannot be artists. And so with your
We
work,
both make the same faces when we.
yeah.
But thank you. It feels, Diane, it's always I love speaking with just about everyone. And it is though really different when you're in a conversation with somebody who understands the very thing that we're talking about. Because we're often in the role of activist without thinking about it at all, right? I know my friends, some of my community of artists who I was working with prior to any of this work, once in a while there'll be these statements which they're mind blowing. Actually, they're so rigid, but the intention isn't bad. But people will actually say well, it's like these folks have become like your true community and your true friends. It's like, yes, because they are but some people really can't see past difference that's very visible, and that's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, speaking of community and friends and people you have worked with, I would like to ask you if you have people you're thinking of when you're thinking of your career, when you're thinking of everything you've accomplished so far, those who have counted, if you have a few people who you have in mind and you want to name them, who would it be and why?
Oh boy. Um, well, we'll name one of my earlier teachers and then mentors, Amelia Itkush. She was a dancer and a somatic practitioner of the mitzvah technique. That's the first body technique that started to unravel some of the tensions I was led to believe that were just by proxy of who I was and what I was as a disabled person. So Amelia passed on some time ago, but her work began to open me up to understanding um, that I did belong. I'll say that in this body and in the world, and also set me on the path to understanding in my work like biodynamic or somatic body, breath, and voice work. So very, very instrumental in my life and in all of my practices and all of the work I do with community. Um, I'll say Petra Kuppers just because but, how not all the books. I'll never forget that she was coming here once to Regina, which was a big feat in and of itself, and it was a while ago. And I was, it's kind of like Mick Jagger was coming here or something. I was so excited, and I was going to be in a boardroom on a committee in that same room, and a number of things happened. They became a bit ill and chose to do it virtually instead, and like no apology for, you know what I mean? Like just so very clear about how to look after themselves in the body and mind that they're in. And so that happened like there was no question about it. That was what was happening. And then we were all in this really, I don't like boardrooms. I actually do have a visceral response to the black rooms and black chairs with big tables. And we were in one of those, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to breathe as easy, even with all my techniques. And they came on and started talking to us, and they were like, before we start, I'm just going to remind you that we're all human. So I want you to go lean into somebody, feel each other's body, and take a breath or two. And just remember, everybody in there has the political right to be in their body in the way that they are. Boom. I feel like in some way, part of me like stood on the table and fainted because I was so excited. Like, of course that didn't happen, but from a theatrical perspective, that's how it felt. And it was one of the best meetings where all of us were different. We were doing some initiative that we didn't know each other. There was no commonality in there really at all, except for Petra and what we were going to do with this conference. Anyway, so that's somebody who I'd name. And then last but definitely not least, possibly number one for me, are the people who I've gotten to work with in Saskatchewan. The people at the front lines of changing, like truly, it sounds like an ego thing and it really isn't. It's anything but. We've been bulldozed a lot. But shifting culture in this province for the last 18 years has been quite a thing. And in the last 10 years with the theater company and now this performance company, but mostly the theater company because it was brand new. There are people like John Lepke who, I mean, he's just a gem, and he was going to possibly be like a collaborator of mine and successor, but he learned really early on that he wanted to do more of his own work and would not be able to with all the administration stuff. So John Lepke, who's a journalist, a disabled journalist and actor, artist, big kudos. Natasha Yurko, also one of the founding members of the theater company. I mean, quadriplegic at 18, sets her mind to continue to do the things she was setting to do before the accident, and does all the theater work and other things with us, becomes a programmer, and then went back to towards some of her own work and became one of the main actors on CBC Push. And also I think her big ad campaign that she went to France for was Lancôme, like an adapter for putting lipstick on and stuff, and she was the chosen model from Canada. So people like that. Shaylee Roseness, who I work with right now, she's somebody who's an actor. She's the main monologuist and actor in the music ensemble, and everyone loves to listen to Shaylee. Like really, truly, she's got that thing. And then she's also my administrative companion. Is not appropriate to say assistants in this case, assistant. So those folks and all of the others that I won't say their names of because we'd be here for a while, they truly, I mean, it's a weird word to use because we fight this word, but they inspire me daily to continue on with what we're doing together and also just be a good person.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic people. Yeah, some of the names. I mean, I remember a workshop with Petra, and they made us breathe. And just that, right? Just the fact to, okay, guys, we're gonna start this meeting by breathing.
I
Thank
know.
you.
I know, right? They truly we don't enter a meeting, and that is like administrative meetings where we don't ask for people, like we tell people that, we need to move at the speed of trust, not to ignite too much activation and have a symptom flare. So we start our own personal meetings and our meetings with other people, much to the chagrin of some folks, I'll say, with like touching in and breathing together before we start to converse. And I mean, well, we swear by it because we're still here against all odds in some ways. I mean, in terms of the sector. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful stories with ArtsAbly today. And there's going to be a resource page that is accompanying this interview, and we're going to publish everything you told us. And yeah, I look forward to really discovering more of the document you will share, and the work of the company. Also, there is a little video that opens the interview. It's not the full video, so go to listen to this website and look at the work that is done. It's fantastic. And thank you
Thank
so much again.
thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, have a fantastic day, and maybe soon in the artistic world.
Yes, until next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.